Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to Being Patient Brain Talks round 2. Sorry about the Wi-Fi problems earlier. We're here to talk about creativity and the brain. So what do we know about the creative brain and how does it help those living with dementia? Well, joining me today is Magda Kaczmarska. She has a science background and also an art background and is also a dancer. So Magda, thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Okay, tell us a little bit first to set the context of this. What is your background? How did you get interested in brain research?
Oh, thank you for that question. So I'll try to keep it short because it is a lot. I started off working in research. So my background is in biochemistry and molecular biophysics. And I worked for about 10 years in neuropharmacology research. So studying Parkinson's and new treatments for Parkinson's disease and aging bone cancer. So kind of the neuroscience of what happens in bones in different conditions. I'm also a dancer though. I've been dancing since I was a child. And while I was working in research, I actually learned about this creative aging approach, this idea that we can use arts, especially for me, what was interesting is you can use dance as a form of not just extending health and well-being for people who are living with a neurodegenerative condition like Parkinson's disease or dementia, but that we can also use that as a vehicle for meaning making to support community. And so I went back and got my MFA in dance, and I've been doing this work ever since.
So one of the reasons why, what I was saying earlier, I was so excited about doing this talk is because we have seen people in our community, and I hated the expression "an Alzheimer's brain doesn't learn" because I've discovered through interviewing people who have been diagnosed that it does continue to flourish, but in a different way. So we have interviewed people who didn't know they had artistic talent and then unleashed it post-diagnosis. They do amazing paintings, amazing art. And so it really proves to me that your creative side can still continue to flourish even after a diagnosis. So tell us a little bit about what we know about the creative brain and why neurodegenerative diseases don't impact that creative part of the brain as severely as they do other parts.
Oh, I love this topic. And I just wanted to mention, your conversation brings to mind one of my mentors, Dr. Bruce Miller from the Global Brain Health Institute and the University of California, San Francisco. So that's definitely, he's put this conversation on the map. So I feel need to honor that. But this is an excellent question. And I think the simplest way to put it is that our brains are plastic, are malleable, or they're not static, set in stone objects that develop when our childhood and maybe our adolescence and then just stay there or go downhill. Now, our brains are constantly evolving across our entire life, and what we do or don't do changes them. So we see that in physical activity and in creative activity, we can support different domains of our brain health. And I like thinking about that. It's a much more positive way of thinking about our brain, same as we can think about our heart health or physical health. There are things that we can do to support our brain health. And we do see that engaging in dance helps support different domains of that.
And so let's take, dancing is your expertise. What do we know? I've often heard too that dancing is one of the best things you can do for your brain because you're listening to music, you're, anything I think that challenges you to think in new patterns, right? Dance is kind of patterns. What do we know about that connection? Why is that so good for our brains?
Well, dance is, as you put it, a really special experience because it's at once an art form and also a physical activity. It's a form of exercise. So there's been a lot of research done on, I would say not enough, but is some research done on what happens as we age in our brains when we engage in dance. And kind of coming back to that idea of different domains, we can see that dance supports our cognition. So thinking about the structure, how different parts of our brain, how much mass there is in different parts of our brain, or the different connections in our brain, as well as the function of our brain. So how we feel that we're able to engage and use our brains, that cognition part gets affected. Obviously mobility, and mobility is affected by our brain, right? So we see that dance supports that. And also our emotional, our social sense. So how we perceive our connections with other people, and also how we feel, our mood changes. So all three of those are impacted by dance in a positive way from what we see. A lot of that research has been done in healthy older adults, so not people who are living with dementia or another neurodegenerative condition. We need more research there, but we see that a lot of that applies because brains are brains. We all have them, but there's definitely more that we can learn.
What part of the brain are we using when we dance? I mean, we know, Alzheimer's, for example, impacts the hippocampus at first and continues to move to different parts of the brain. But what is happening? Like, which part of the brain are we using when we dance?
Oh, excellent question. And I think, again, there's more that we could know. But what's wonderful about dance is that it's global, right? We're using different parts of our brain to support those different spaces. So for instance, there's some research that's been looking at cognition. So thinking about the structures as well as the functions of how our brain works. And we see that with healthy older adults, when they engage in an aerobic dance, so something that gets our heart rate up, this is a group from Rutgers University, Dr. Gluck's team in New Jersey. They actually saw that older adults who engaged in aerobic dance had more active circuits in the medial temporal lobes. And that's actually part of the brain that helps us encode and retain memory. So that's one way that we see changes in the structure and the function. We also, and one of the other things that we know is that it's the aerobic engagement, that oxygen, that increase of oxygen is part of the trick, all right? Which is why physical activity is one of the reasons why physical activity is so good for us, but it's not the only thing. Dance is not just like running on a treadmill. There's other things that are involved, as you said. We're learning steps, we're moving to music, we're engaging with others. And there's actually a group of researchers in Germany that actually compared aerobic activity, just like being on a treadmill or on a stationary bike, with aerobic dance. And they were matched for aerobic output. So we know that that wasn't what was causing the changes. And they saw that people actually had an increase in parts of the areas of the brain and volume. And they also had an increase of a molecule called BDNF, so brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which actually is a precursor of new neuronal growth. So there's, just from that sense, we see that there's some changes. Obviously, I can talk about the mobility and the mood as well. We see those are modulated by different parts of our brain. And all of those are benefited, or we receive a benefit in it from engaging in dance.
Well, I can't help but think about the clock test, right? Because for cognition, you're given the clock test. And why it's an indicator is because you have to think of many layers of information at one time, right? And so if it's, and it's not literal, right? So if it's like 20 to 2, yeah, there's no 20 on the clock. And so that's where you are able to pick up deficits in cognition. Well, the reverse of this, I think, and I'm, this is my educated a non-scientific guess, is that dance forces you to think about a lot of things at one time, right? You're translating the music, you're translating that into different patterns of movement, right? And you almost kind of have to anticipate what's coming up. So I can understand why that would like light up a lot of neurocircuits inside our bodies, right?
Oh, definitely. And again, I'm a bit of a geek, so I want to know more. I don't think, well, we can see the benefit without having to necessarily get the empirical evidence. But I am curious. And I think if we know, then we can be more intentional with how we use this craft and our practice. But definitely, and there's different ways of engaging in dance. So I think a lot of us are familiar with maybe like a Zumba class, or maybe if some of us have studied a form of dance, a lot of times there's one direction of exchange, right? There's somebody, a facilitator or an instructor who's sharing a movement, and we're either following and at the same moment, or we're learning that sequence of movements and repeating it. And that's of value. And I think that's one of the things that we saw in that previous study I mentioned, that an increase in challenge in those learned choreographies, those theories of movement, actually helped increase that neurotropic factor, that molecule that helps increase new neuronal growth. But there's also other elements, right? There's the rhythm. We know that obviously we probably people might be familiar with some of the research for people living with Parkinson's of how we can use rhythm and specific rhythmic cues to help rehabilitate gait. And we think of that as something we have to do standing, but there's actually research with people living with Alzheimer's disease, so a type of dementia, where even just sitting and tapping along with music helps engage the rhythmic rebalancing in our body and helps support people with posture and coordination. So there's a lot there. But what is missing?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's interesting in that one of a symptom of Alzheimer's can be repeated tapping on their own, right? There are people who sit there and tap, 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 tap. So
yeah,
it's interesting to think about.
I wonder sometimes if that might be different, because we know that tapping or shaking or movement can help us calm our nervous systems and can be a form of rehabilitating a homeostasis to help us feel more calm. So without knowing context, there might be something there. But I think a lot of us are also intuitive. Our brains are resistant to change. So who knows, maybe this is somebody who knows that this is something that I need to do to help support my movement. One thing that I think is missing, and I've noticed some research in this space within music. It's really promising, but what part of the work that I do is co-creative dance, where where that exchange that I mentioned isn't just in one direction, it's bi-directional, not only between the facilitator and one individual, but the group as a whole. And that, I think, is like a gymnasium for the mind. We're getting lots of opportunities to create our own expression. So both from a neurological, neurocognitive space, as well as from a meaning-making kind of relational space, there's a lot of value there. But unfortunately, we don't really have that, really any research. There's maybe one or two studies that I know about that have looked at this. So I'm really hoping that we can have more.
So just from my own experience with my mom, she loves to dance. I mean, she still loves to dance, and her rhythm's quite good, right? But it's a way for her to connect with people when she's losing words, because she's now in a later stage of Alzheimer's, but she's still, you put on some music and she's just like boogieing all, and it's almost like you can connect with her better when you dance than you can speaking with her.
I mean, thank you for sharing that. I wish if you're ever, I don't know if your mom is here in New York, but I would love to dance with your mom and with you together. You hit the nail on the head right there. I think we're conditioned to think that our forms of expressions are purely verbal, but in fact, we know, and I think if we choose to move our attention there, we'll notice that we express ourselves in lots of different ways. I mean, I'm a very physical person, so I use my hands a lot, but we use gesture, we use the tone of our voice, we use sounds, we use how we relate to another person with the position of our body. All of that is a way of expressing. And dance, especially when we use it in a co-creative way, or when we bring an improvisational lens to it, we can actually expand our toolkit of expression. And I think what I've seen in my work with people living with dementia is that it supports everybody in the room, people who are living with dementia, staff, care partners, friends. We all find a way of discovering that we actually possess the tools to share with one another, to listen and notice things from one another that we might have missed before. And the truth is that we all possess that. And the only thing that is missing is just having a space to do it in and to have the time to engage. But even just one meeting, it's I've been doing this work in creative aging for over 12 years, and every single time it fills me with awe and gratitude. What it can happen in just one meeting, and what happens over a series of meetings is just profound.
So I want to show you, I have actually this video. I'm going to share it with you guys of my mom boogieing. And she's 94 years old, and she's in a later stage of dementia. And can you guys see my screen? Sorry, everything's, can you see the screen? I'm going to make it bigger.
Yeah,
I'll present it. I'll make it bigger. Hold on. Okay. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now this is my mom at 94, and she's losing words, but I want to.
Oh my God, look at those hips. Do you know what?
And that's her wonderful, wonderful caregiver, Anna. But you can see she still kind of has rhythm, right?
Oh, she's got great rhythm. They're having quite a party.
And she's laughing and she's engaging. Her caregiver is awesome. We love her.
Oh, I love that.
Oh
my God.
So that to me is our new way of communication, right? And you know, all of her life she's loved to dance, right? And the fact that is, if you put on this music, she'll just pop right up. And there's something about the brain where she can still engage, you know, when you put on music. It's amazing.
Totally. And what I'll do in the program that I run called Stories in the Moment is that we do some of what Anna just did with your mom. What's your mom's name?
Alvira.
Yeah. Alvira. What Alvira and Anna just did, which is, you know, sharing in their movements together. You know, so each one of them I don't know who started it. I think your mom did. Yeah. She started this movement and then Anna picked it up. So we do some of this exchange, and doing that more helps us expand our toolkit. But also there's something really powerful about being the person who starts the movement rather than just the facilitator starting the movement and then seeing your movement highlighted by a group of other people. What I do in Stories in the Moment is that we take this idea of movement and dance as a form of storytelling, and I invite us to explore a theme. So for instance, today I was just in a group here in Queens, and we selected the theme of San Francisco. And so we chose to blend really rich chocolate that's somewhere halfway between milky and dark chocolate. And we decided that the hills were too steep, so we had to pull ourselves up with a rope. And we created our own dance story together. And the beauty of that is that every single individual gets to play their part in making that story. And some people contribute the words, some people contribute movement, some people do both, but it's ours. It's not mine, it's theirs. And that, I think, it has a value that I think it's hard to measure empirically.
Yes.
It's something that gets us at a space of belonging. It helps us have a sense of agency and ownership over our community, and purpose and meaning, value. I think that's what value is.
Absolutely.
Knowing that we are valuable.
So tell me a little bit about how to, like, that, I don't know, was that with people who have been diagnosed, the San Francisco thing that you were doing, or was
Oh,
that?
yeah, this is
Yeah.
with the Queens Community House. It's a neighborhood community center, and they have a social adult day center. And they
So
just started going back in person. So I have the chance to finally connect with them
that's
together in one
wonderful.
room.
Tell us though, for people at home, how do they even, like, what should they be thinking about? Well, give us some strategies at home
Yeah.
when we want to engage and dance with our loved one.
Well, I'll tell you two things. One, if you feel comfortable with Zoom, which not everybody does, I invite you to come to the Dementia Action Alliance. I lead Stories in the Moment every other Thursday at 2 Eastern. And there you can do this with other people from across the country. But even just at home, one, I think just putting on some music and letting yourself move in a way that you want to. I think that's a way of just tapping into your own movement language at that space. And if you have one other person, do a call and response, or take turns being the one who leads. Or if you want to add an additional challenge, say, okay, let's see what we can do with our head. What can we do with our shoulders? Next time, let's each come up with a way of moving our arms, our legs. So before you know it, you've done like 15 minutes of dance.
It's true.
One thing too is moving slower too. We don't often take a chance to slow down. So I'm putting on something a little bit slower and doing mirroring together. Sorry, I interrupted you. I get too excited.
Those are all really, really good strategies to use. And, in terms of, so tell me a little bit about your research, because I think that you're launching research and you might need participants or whatever. Tell us what you're doing and what you're trying to find out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for asking about that. So I mentioned Dr. Bruce Miller and the Global Brain Health Institute. So I'm incredibly honored to be an Atlantic Fellow for Equity and Brain Health, which means I went through this fellowship that brings together artists, researchers, clinicians to help support expanding brain health awareness around the world, supporting brain health, extending it, and also reducing the impact of dementia globally. So I did my fellowship 3 years ago, and I received a pilot award. It's a pilot for brain health leaders. And so I'm doing some research. I'm getting a chance to put together these two hats that I wear. And it's for the program Stories in the Moment. So it's a dance program for people living with dementia. And I'm inviting people who would like to join that program online for 3 months. And for those who would like to, we have the approval to ask questions, to ask people before and after, what do you notice? What is your well-being? How are you feeling? And then what do you notice after the program? And we're going to have a focus group at the end, which is, my hope is that people will be able to share what works for them and what they'd like to see different, so that their voice can be included in how we shape how dance programs moving forward will grow and develop for this community.
Are you looking for people without a diagnosis, with a diagnosis, both?
So inviting people who are living with dementia or who are experiencing cognitive changes. So maybe some words that they might have heard as MCI, mild cognitive impairment. Somebody might have said Alzheimer's disease or frontotemporal dementia, Lewy body. So and anything within that space. I'm not going to be looking for a piece of paper from anybody. So
are you looking for only, just so people know, are you looking for only earlier stage, or is it anyone through the course of diagnosis?
The only limitation is that it's an online program. So if you feel comfortable on Zoom and you will enjoy being on Zoom, or you're curious to try, and then you can always try and decide this isn't for me. That's really the only limitation. Definitely not feeling confident in speaking verbally is not a hindrance. We part of what we will be doing is connecting and movement. So not having changes in accessing words is not a problem. And I invite care partners or a friend who's with you about 8 hours a week. So somebody who knows
so
you.
A care partner can be with the person, and then they can the questions. Like, so if I wanted to enroll my mom, the caregiver could answer the questions or no?
Well, both of you will. Both of you will. And I have a phenomenal research coordinator who's joining me for that. Their name's Magda Kaczmarska, a PhD student in neuroscience, amazing human who's got a lot of experience and is going to be working to make sure that there's a separation between the person who's asking you questions and the person who's running the program, which will be me. And yeah,
I think that
we're
Katie,
enrolling now.
Yeah, I think Katie has posted the link to your, in this, in the comments section. So be sure, if you're interested, go to Facebook. You'll see, well, you're on Facebook, obviously, but we have that link posted, and go in and you can find out more about Magda's research.
Thank you so much. And above all, I just encourage you to keep dancing with your mom, and for those who are listening, and join if you are interested, but you're not interested in research. Please check out the Dementia Action Alliance. If you have questions, contact me. And if you're in New York, come to Queens. I'd love to see you in person.
It sounds like an amazing opportunity. Thank you so much, Magda, for sharing. I love this topic. It's a happy topic for all of us, no matter how you're related to the disease or what stage you're in. Dance, it still exists for everyone. So thank you so much for sharing with us your expertise.
Thank you, Deborah, for all that you do, and for having me here today. It's been an honor.
So if you guys want to see this interview again, we're going to post it on beingpatient.com. I always say this, but if you want to know more about these talks, sign up for our newsletter, because in every week we list the upcoming talks. They're really just meant as a free service for everyone, so that you can have access to experts like Magda. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.